Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, a very special guest, former WWF superstar from the infamous Killer Bees. He's also the president of the CAC Cauliflower Alley Club. He's Mr. B. Brian Blair. Mr. Blair, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Thank you, John, and thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on the two-man power trip. And I was mentioning to you a couple minutes ago that I was just listening to your podcast with JBL, who happens to be one of my favorite people. Him and Gerald Briscoe just did their podcast not long ago, and they're two great guys. And John had some great stories for you, so I hope I can be just half as good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what have you been up to? What have you been doing?
Well, it's been kind of a rough road for me. I'm always so positive and upbeat, but in July 16th, I had my second back surgery, and I contacted osteomyelitis, which is an infection of the spine. And the we didn't know I had an infection. I actually went to the 55th CAC reunion. I did several autograph sessions, and John, I was in so much pain I can't even describe it. And I kept telling the surgeon, like I have pain that's not from the operation. And he said, well, go to therapy. These guys are busy, and I understand, but anyway, it got so bad that I had been to the emergency room twice, and they thought I had kidney stones through the CT. Finally, my GP, my general practitioner, primary care doctor, he said, Brian, I think you need to get an MRI and a blood test because you may have an infection of some kind. I don't think this is normal. And sure enough, he was right. I lost all my feeling in my lower body, my ability to walk, actually couldn't walk, my ability to pee, to poop, I had no bodily functions and no lower body feeling, only pain. And so called 911. They rushed me to the hospital. They performed an emergency surgery on October 30th. And I've had to learn to walk all over again. So it was
Wow.
very challenging. And my son was my 29-year-old son, my oldest son, Brett. He was murdered on July 22nd. And I've learned a lot about facing adversity, my friend. I've kind of
Yeah,
felt
my
like
God.
Job. I'm a big man of faith, and if it wasn't for the big man upstairs, and of course my family and good friends, obviously, yeah, I would have thrown in the towel. But it's you always have to realize that. Fortunately, I faced a lot of adversity in my life, so I basically went from welfare, from poverty to being a very successful person. And I owe that all that to realizing that I had two ears and one mouth, and did a lot of listening and took a lot of great advice, and uh, realized that other people had challenges. My dad used to tell me when this is very old, but it's true. I say, Dad, I need some new shoes. And I'll never forget when he said, yeah, son, you tell that to the guy next to you with no feet. And, he would say things like that to me. My grandfather in Arkansas would do the same when I'd go up to his ranch every summer of my life, to my grandparents' ranch in St. Joe, Arkansas. And it was a lot of wisdom that came from my elders. And it helped me to overcome adversity and challenges growing up. And I think that I had a lot of wonderful years, and life certainly can't be all roses without some thorns. And I just had my share of thorns the last half a year or so.
You also have a new book, right? Truth Be Told.
I sure do. I just happen to have a copy
Oh,
sitting right next to me,
perfect.
John. Truth
Nice.
be
Yes.
told, and it's available on Amazon right now. Actually, this book, it looks like I can't read. Well, yeah, I'm sure you can't read those, but
Yeah.
the re, uh, the well, first off, the reviews are I'm just grateful to all the people that took the time to write them. And then, of course, I got to really thank Bret Hart, Steve Kern, and Hulk Hogan for doing my forewords and my after forward. And of course, Ian Douglas, who is a tremendous writer. I met Ian. Well, before I met Ian, I read the book that he wrote on Bugsy McGraw. Do you remember Mike Davis, Bugsy McGraw?
Oh yeah,
Wonderful.
I actually interviewed him to promote the book. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay, to Brute Power. Yeah,
Yep.
Brute Power was an excellent read, and I knew right then when I wound up finally getting in contact with Ian that he was the guy to write the book, and he's tremendous. I just fed him all the all the memories, and he weaved them together, and it did so tremendously. It's very humbling when you get reviews and things that look like you wrote them yourself. And I swear I didn't, but
Hmm.
it's nice. And it's truth be told is a story. Well, it's my life story, but I tell other people's stories. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Yeah, it just, there's everything in the book from some of the funniest stories that I've ever been a part of, some of the funniest ribs and pranks, and just true stories about how you can be what you want to be. And I guess the best thing to do is go to Amazon and read the reviews, and people have pretty much summarized from all over the world, what they thought of the book, and the lowest rating out of 5 stars that I've had is a 4-star, rating. So it's a humbling, very humbling.
What was the experience like putting it all together? Was it therapeutic? It's one of the things where like, oh God, I got to relive that. Was it a fun time or was it kind of like maybe a mixed bag?
Um, I would say it was more therapeutic than I have to relive this again, because I really had to go back and think, from uh, welding mailbox posts for a guy named Bill Wallenter in Drew Park, which is part of Tampa, Florida, where I grew up. And I actually grew up till I was almost 11 in Gary, Indiana. And the Jacksons lived not far from us. And, back then, almost all my friends were African American and were black. And there was never any racial tension, or we were all just buddies. We never saw color. We never saw anything other than friends. It was never anything like the media wants you to believe today. So, uh, going back and reliving those was very good for the soul, and being able to share those experiences that I had with people uh, is wonderful. From building a multi-location, multi-million-dollar business with Gold's Gyms, being elected to in a countywide seat in Hillsborough County, which you have more voters than in 10 or 11 other states. It was 10, I think it's 11 now. We've grown here in Hillsborough County, where Tampa was one of the municipalities, Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. Hillsborough County is 1,078.2 square miles, and we have about 1,500,000 people. And so you have more voters here than you have, like I said, in 10 other states. It's a big county. It was a great experience to be a public official, a public servant. And I learned a lot about what you call the fake news, if you will. And I learned how to get along with people, whether you agreed or disagreed with their philosophies. You still have to have communication. Kathy Castor, one of our senators right now, I helped her get a few things done because we had a majority conservative board, which I'm a conservative, and she's progressive, and but she's a wonderful person with a great heart, and I enjoyed working with her. We just had 2 different opinions on how to get to one destination. And so I'm sure we fed off of each other. It was a good time and a good learning experience. And then I went on and decided to devote a lot of time to helping my colleagues, and that's where the Cauliflower Alley Club came in. And for 8 years now, since before since our 49th reunion, um, Nick Bockewinkle was the president then, and he wasn't the CEO. Carl Lauer was the CEO, and Carl's a wonderful man, still on the board. He's given almost 40 years of his life to the mission of the CAC, which helps um, wrestlers that have fallen on difficult financial times. We help them obviously financially, and it's not a loan. You know, we give them the money, and you'd be surprised, JP, how many wrestlers fall on difficult financial times, whether it's not having the insurance that they needed and they get sick, you know, diseases and elective surgeries that become necessities. And you know, one of my best friends passed away just you know, a little over a year ago, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, and you know, Paul not even a year ago, and Paul, I keep forgetting we're in 2022 now, but Paul was, him and I were like brothers, and golly, we just had so much fun together. But he wound up, I mean, Paul made so much money, and he wound up needing the assistance of the Cauliflower Alley Club. And we don't mention names unless they really want us to, like Kamala or Bobby the Brain Heenan. Just, you know, guys that contributed so much to all of our entertainment. And that's why it's so nice, because without all, to me, it's like you may not have seen the person that worked in the Portland territory, for example. I never worked there, but I knew everybody that did work there. And we may not have worked on the same cards together, but in a way, we always helped each other because we kept the business alive and we kept fans alive. And even more so when we morphed into that was an experience in itself. That's, in truth be told, you know, we went from the territories into the national spotlight when, you know, WWF started WrestleMania. Right before WrestleMania 1, I was in New York, and Vince, well, say, let's see, WrestleMania 1 was in 85. So in 84, I was in WWF for Vince McMahon Sr. What a wonderful man he was. And I was going to come back as and work for the Intercontinental title. And then I got a call from, I was actually in Florida. I was a Florida heavyweight champion. And it was, you know, a great spot to be in. And one of the, perhaps the only shot that I can remember that I ever missed when I could have made it, or I wasn't hurt or anything. It almost caused my friendship, longtime friendship with Mike Graham, because Eddie Graham was deceased and Mike took over the territory. I worked a program with Ravishing Rick Rude, who was just a tremendous hand. And I was on my 2-week notice. Hogan had called me up and asked me if I knew Jim Brunzell. And I said, just from the magazines and stuff, I never had met Jumpin' Jim. And I knew he was a good tag team wrestler because of Greg Gagne working in the AWA. And Terry had just come from the AWA. You know, Vince kind of cherry plucked everybody from every territory that drew money. And so it was my turn to get plucked. I'm on top. And so I agreed to come up. Jim and I were promised the tag team titles, which is a whole nother story. But getting back to Florida, I was on my way to Fort Myers. And apparently the place was packed. And I just decided, I don't know why I decided this, but I had a flat tire. I was kind of really looking forward to going to New York, and all of a sudden I said, well, do I really want to go to Fort Myers or not? And, I don't know. So I this guy stopped on the side of the road, and really nice person, helped me out, got the spare on, drove to a payphone. We didn't have cell phones. I drove to a payphone, and I called the arena in Fort Myers. We have the numbers to the arenas in all of our pay slips and our bookings, and because you'd get them for the next town then. And so I called, and Mike wound up getting on the phone. He said, Brian, where are you at? Where are you at? I said, oh, I'm stuck on the side of the road. So I lied. I lied. I said I was stuck on the side of the road, which I was, but I wasn't technically at the time. I was at the payphone.
Right.
I told him, this guy's here helping me change the tire. I don't know if I'm going to make it or not. He says, well, I'm on the way up to get you. You got to come here. He said, there's more people outside the building than there are inside the building. It's completely sold out. And so I said, no, Mike, I'll be there. And I never made it. Mike was extremely upset with me, but we got over that hump in the road, and went to New York, and it was back again, and it was a wonderful time. Great experiences, great times, and so many of these the adventures that you won't hear tonight on your show, are in Truth Be Told. And quite honestly, JP, it took me almost 2 years to write this book.
Wow.
It's a lot of memories. It's over 400 pages, and of course, there's some very unique pictures that haven't been published before. And it's just it was a good time actually writing the book, and it's even a better time to hear the people when they read the book. And actually, people email me, or Facebook, Twitter, whatever. They're constantly asking me about different things in the book and telling me wonderful things, and I never get tired of answering them. It's a new chapter in my life.
So for the WWF, obviously the WrestleMania era, so Hogan is kind of responsible for you and Brunzell forming the Killer Bees?
Yes, actually, Vince wanted to create like a real meaningful tag team division, which he did. He brought in some great teams, if you remember, JP. And so Terry suggested to him that, because I was going to come up and work for the Intercontinental title, which Tito Santana wound up in that spot. Tito's a wonderful guy too. Merced wound up in that spot, and I just took Terry's advice, met Jim in Brantford, Ontario, Canada, and we didn't have a name at that time. We were just Blair and Brunzell, and again, Vince wanted to create a very meaningful tag team division, and so we met in Brantford, and George Scott came up to us and he said, hey guys, I'm just getting to know Jimmy. Great conversation. A lot of guys in the locker room. Lanny Poffo just happened to be sitting right next to where Jimmy and I were talking, and George had come up and said, hey, you guys need to think of a catchy name. Vince wants a catchy name before you go on, and you're on in less than an hour. So George walked away, and wow, we're just sitting there, catchy name, and a few names came up, and I started the bees, Blair, Brunzell, and I had remembered the Killer Bees defense on the Miami Dolphins football team. I think I was in junior high school. It was like 1972, and the Bonacani and I think it was Baumgarten. Anyway, they had the linebackers all. Their last names began with a B, and they were the Killer Bees. So I said, how about the Killer Bees? Jimmy said, the Killer Bees. I like that. That's great. And George hadn't even left the room, and George the Animal Steel was there. So he said, George is still there. And we kind of called him over. We did call him over, and he came back. And I said to George, how about the Killer Bees? And he got a big smile on his face. He goes, I like it. Let me see what Vince thinks. So he left right away, and he came back maybe 10 minutes later, and he says, hey, that's it. You guys are the Killer Bees. So the Bees were born in Brantford, Ontario, and this couldn't happen in a million years. But when this is taking place and we're the Killer Bees, Lanny Poffo was reaching in this big bag that he had was actually a hockey bag. So that's how big it was. You know, you can carry a hockey stick, all that stuff in there, your pads. So he reaches in and he's got so many tights in there, and he pulls out these black and yellow tights, striped tights. So they were the same tights that we wore, and he happened to have 2 pairs of them. And so Lanny gave us the tights right there. It was just kind of unbelievable how everything meshed together. And God, we had 4 years of a wonderful time.
What did you think about Jim Brunzell, though? Because obviously, you know of him, but now you got a team with him. Like, what was the chemistry like, and did you guys get along, away from the ring as much as you did inside the ring? Because you guys had great chemistry in the ring.
Yeah, well, JP, we got along so well that once in a while, when we even felt like there might be, maybe it was time to ride with somebody else, we would do that. And we'd share a room. Back then it was always about not how much you made, about how much you saved. And so we would do all kinds of things. I mean, there's so many ribs just on saving money that I can think about from the business, such as Ali Bey the Turk. One time, the Turk, I don't know if you remember the Turk, Ali Bey. He was like a old timer when I was getting into the business. So, but anyway, he was so tight that he'd never get a hotel room. He'd sleep in his van. And he talked with very broken English, and he'd say, well, I sleep in my van, and I pull into the Ramada Inn, and I save $49 or $39. And, he'd tell us about all these ways he was saving money with his van. And then back then you'd pay trans, what was called trans. So like the guys that broke me in, like Jack Briscoe and Buddy Colt, they would always say, hey, don't ever ride with somebody and not have your trans already figured out. If you're going to, for example, if you're in Tampa and you're going to Tallahassee, it's 400 miles. So, that's 800 miles round trip times a nickel. So you had your money, $40, whatever, you'd have your money for trans ready, as soon as before you got out of the car, you'd hand it to the driver, or right as soon as you got out of the car, whichever was most convenient. And so Ali Bey would make money from trans with his van. He's telling us how much money he saved. And the funniest thing, Jimmy goes, you know what, Turk? He goes, I got an idea. He goes, the Hilton's right across the street. Why don't you park in their parking lot and sleep, and you can save $100? And he goes, oh, Jimmy, oh, that's such a beautiful idea. And he was so excited. All the boys, they like Turks parked in the Hilton, saving $100. It's just little things, that were so fun just to entertain us on the road. And there's so much fun in this book right here. I tell you, you'll enjoy it. I promise. All the boys that have read it, everybody, just even guys, especially guys, because every word, Ian Douglas was so articulate when he made sure he went back and proofed everything, fact checked everything. So every story in here is legitimate. It's the truth, verified by witnesses or in print or whatever the case may be. So it's no, it's a shoot. The book's a total 100% legitimate book, and it's just a lot of fun.
With the Killer Bees and you and Jim Brunzell, a lot of people always say Heart Foundation, Killer Bees. I mean, that tag team division is stacked, but they always kind of say you guys had the best chemistry, or have the best matches. I mean, we're talking about a division with Demolition and the Bulldogs and the Islanders. I mean, all these awesome teams and a million that I'm forgetting. But you know what I mean? It was like, wow, Killer Bees, Heart Foundation. What was it about you guys in the Heart Foundation that just was like every time you stepped in there, you just had awesome matches?
Brett and I had almost the identical psychology. And psychology is learned from a lot of experience, of course, but I learned a lot of my psychology in the Florida territory and in the Louisiana territory. Bill Watts was a disciple, if you will, of Eddie Graham's, and Eddie Graham always said, it says wrestling on the marquee. You want to
Yep.
you wanna wrestle. You want to entertain the audience, but you've got to wrestle, and you've always got to work a shoot. If people can see through it, they're they're not going to buy another ticket. You got to make sure that everything's solid, and it's just like going to the movies. If you go to watch Superman versus Batman and the punches are missing by a foot,
Right.
then you're not going to be into that too much. But because they have the art of camera angles and technology, they can make everything look 100% legit. So when we have people, sitting 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet away from you in the first row, sometimes right on top of you, if you don't connect, you're they're going to poo-poo at that match. They're not going to buy that match, and and pretty soon it's going to hurt everybody. So we just had that good solid psychology, and we always built everything up. We built it up. We built it up until, man, when somebody made that hot tag, boom, the roof came off. And, the Hart Foundation knew how to get heat. The Killer Bees knew how to make a comeback. And we just, I saw on Twitter not long ago, the Youngbloods posted, they were the innovators of tennis shoes in the wrestling ring. And
Yeah.
then Sean Waltman, X-Pac, sent a picture of WrestleMania 3 where we had Nike tennis shoes. We were actually the innovators of tennis shoes in the wrestling ring, and we wore them for lots of events. But it's amazing. What's old is new, and people, when they go back to the well and look at the psychology. And again, the Hart Foundation, Brett had wonderful psychology. I had the same kind of psychology that Brett did, and Jimmy was from that same background as well. Jimmy Brunzell, and then Jimmy Neidhart. He had great psychology as well. And I used to wrestle. He was a Russian in Florida. Jim Neidhart, believe it or not, was a Russian at one time. And I used to wrestle Jim Neidhart all the time in singles matches. So it was like, putting together some pieces that already fit together. When Vince, put the Killer Bees and the Hart Foundation together. As a matter of fact, Brett talks about it a lot in his book, which is a wonderful book. I mean,
Yep.
It's been out for several years, but if you haven't read it, Brett's book is phenomenal. So there's so many good wrestling books to read, and you get a much more in-depth look at wrestling and the personalities of those that are inside of the books that you read. So,
And he said in that book that Hart Foundation Killer Bees were the best tag matches of that era. So I mean, even he was talking them up.
Oh yeah. And another thing, Brett was just he took everything in the ring so seriously, but outside the ring, it was just it was always fun. Like he always had a chalkboard and he'd do drawings on it, and they were hilarious caricatures, cartoons. Usually at the agent's expense or one of the wrestlers' expenses, and he drew a caricature inside of the book just for the book Truth Be Told we're discussing, and it's so funny. It's the Killer Bees against the Hart Foundation in 2021, 22. So what in his imagination what we would look like wrestling together, and it's priceless. Just that caricature drawing. It's the only drawing that he's ever done for a book, and I was very honored to have him do that.
Were you guys out to kind of like steal the show? Because WWF really known as a quote unquote big man territory. Obviously, Hogan's a huge guy, Andre the Giant, Big John Studd, Bundy, all these monsters. Were you guys trying to be like, all right, you guys can do this. We're going to have the best matches and we're going to steal the show?
Well, JP, it wasn't so much about stealing the show as much as it was about working as hard as you can. You don't want to leave anything left. Um, you want to give the fans every ounce of emotion, of energy, everything that you have. And I don't care if we had, 500 people or 50,000 people. We worked hard all the time. And when you have four guys of the same mindset, it makes it easy. So, we just, not so much about stealing the show, but it was more about making sure that the Heart Foundation and the Killer Bees made a lasting impression on the people's minds so that they would want to see us, regardless of who won or lost, that they would want to see us wrestle again. And then we were filming in Canada, um, and a guy named Billy Red Lyons, um, who I really didn't know as a wrestler. I thought he was an announcer. I got to be friends with him. He was just such a good announcer. And I hadn't done enough homework. And turns out Billy Red Lyons was a huge star in his day. And he told me that, he told Jim and I that him and his brother, I believe it was, were a heel tag team, and they used to put masks on and switch, and it would get so much heat. And he said, the way that you guys work, you're such baby faces that I think you could do this and get away with it as baby faces if the heel gets enough heat on you. So, we liked it and we tried it, and sure enough, I mean, people bought that. And then Lord Lord Blears was doing commentating, and so he called it Mass Confusion, and so Mass Confusion caught on. And of course, back then, Gino Morella, he was great. Gorilla Monsoon, uh, him and him and Vince and Lord Blears were primary commentators for the first part of the Killer Bees run, and for the first year. They were our main commentators, and they were just phenomenal. And uh, Lord Lord Blears really got the Mass Confusion thing over. It was good.
So cool, so different. I just remember, as a kid being like, "Oh my god, what's going on here?" You know what I mean? It was great. It was such a cool, different gimmick to kind of pull off.
Yeah, it was totally different. It was very, and that's why we were going to turn heel. And and if Jimmy was sitting next to me, he'd tell you exactly what I'm. Jimmy and I are still very close, and we do a lot of events every single year together, signings and things like that. So Jimmy and Vince, I didn't know this until maybe 4 years ago, that Jimmy had sued Greg Gagne and Vince because they created action figures. Vince did, and Greg signed the contract, signed Jimmy's name, handed it back to Vince. Well, anyway, Jimmy wound up suing Vince and Greg together, and he won the lawsuit. So, he had heat kind of going in. I mean, I guess Vince realized that, it was his fault, or just as much his fault as Greg's fault. And, but, Jimmy would do things like, um, Vince came and he was really excited about the Killer Bee t-shirts that they just came out. And you got to stare at them for a little bit before, and then they kind of maybe grow on you a little bit. And, but I know better than, if somebody's excited, I'm not going to rain on their parade and say, hey, that looks terrible. But Jimmy's such a straight shooter. He goes, Vince is excited. What do you think about these t-shirts? I go, look, and I go, wow, Vince, those are really nice. I like those. Jimmy goes, I don't. Those are terrible. And I'm going, Jimmy, it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't hold him back. And, there were other things where, as Jimmy and Vince were like oil and water. So I kind of got the brunt end of that, the tag team situation, because we were promised the belts 3 times on 3 different occasions. And, from Vince himself and George Scott. And, they'd say, oh, the money's in the chase, the money's in the chase. But you've got to, I finally said, Vince, you promised us a belt 3 times. It's never happened. Um, There was Strike Force coming in. We had the Rougeos, the Strike Force. We had so many tag teams coming in. Um, that we kind of got mixed up then in the shuffle, and so I wound up giving my notice in Salisbury, Maryland, um, not too long before WrestleMania 5. We were in WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 4, and not too long before WrestleMania 5. I just said, I'd rather. We had wrestled 67 days straight. Valentine and Hammer were, I mean, golly, they were about to get divorces from their wives. Jimmy was arguing. He was missing his kids, functions. And people don't realize how grueling that is to be. We were in 67 different cities without a day off in 4 different countries. And when I say we had the day off to fly, to the country, but we'd wrestle immediately. So you'd get
Right. Not
out.
much of a day off. Yeah.
Yeah, it was your day was in an airplane and in a car or a train uh, or a bus getting to your shot. So we went 67 days. And oftentimes we'd wrestle 2 times in a day, 2 different venues. Television was a lot of times 2 different shots. So 67 days without a day off, and then being in 5 different countries, it just it was too much.
People only realized how hot wrestling was back then, that they'd have like an A town, a B town, a C town, sometimes a D town, all running on the same night. And WWF was taking over globally, literally just taking over the world.
Exactly, JP, and where that really came from. Uh, I was in Atlanta in 83, 83, 84, before I went back to WWF. Um, and the TBS realized that they were going in places that weren't being utilized so much. Like it was the Sheik's territory, and everybody respected each other's territories. I actually have some papers from the notes from one of the NWA conventions in Las Vegas, where they would elect a champion, and Vince McMahon Sr. would come down, Vern Gagne would come down from the AWA, and they'd all get along, and champion against champion. They'd book that date. So anyway, nobody would step. They all had respect for each other. Um, but they realized that Sheik wasn't running like Columbus, Ohio, Wheeling, West Virginia, uh, very populated towns. And so we went in there from Georgia Championship Wrestling, and we were just packing the places. I mean, Columbus, Ohio, I mean, it was the Ohio Center. We were just rocking that place. Towns in West Virginia, just all over the place. They were on fire, and Vince saw that. Vince Senior saw that, but Vince Senior would never step on anybody's toes. That was he was, but he would talk to Junior about these things. The Junior saw him, and Junior had loyalty to nobody. And I heard JBL on your podcast, as I mentioned at the top of the show, and Gerald Briscoe, who we were also talking about. Gerald Briscoe and Jack, his brother Jack, owned part uh, of Georgia Championship Wrestling. They also owned a portion of Florida Championship Wrestling. Well, they wound up selling their the rights to TBS to Vince. Collectively, all the shareholders got together and decided to sell everything to Vince. And I believe it was for $1 million then. And so Vince, they got $1 million. Vince bought it, and Vince needed money really bad for WrestleMania. So he wound up, and I guess he had USA then, but he could have controlled everything. Hindsight's always 2020, and that would have been good for the boys. At that time, it would have just cut a few years of holding on off, because Vince was just that powerful, and cable television was that powerful. And owning the two major stations, that's it. But he wound up selling TBS back. And uh, I know what happened. They sold it for 2 million and bought it back for 1 million, I believe it was. Gerald could tell you exactly, but I'm almost sure that's the figures. Don't hold me to that, but I'm real close. And Vince went on like he did and created, the greatest wrestling empire in history. Of course, he's got a lot of competition now with AEW, but it's still, WWE is a household name. WrestleMania is a household event. It's major. It's provided so many people, a living. We would have never been doing podcasts and, things, there wouldn't be, Dave Meltzer's dirt sheets that were very popular in the 80s, or, the things that go on, Greg Oliver's Canadian sites. There's so many people that have made money from the success of Vince McMahon, and and others, but primarily Vince. And in one way, a lot of it cost a lot of the guys their jobs. Obviously, I mean, the wrestling talent pool shrunk big time, because if you weren't one of the top guys, I mean, you just had to go to the independents, work where there was work. But anyway, it's all worked out, I guess. That's progress. That's in the evolution of the business.
Going back to WWF, remember when they made the LJNs, the action figures, the big rubber figures? Did you make a ton of money off of those? Because it seemed like basically everybody that was a part of Hillbilly Jim's talking about $90,000 checks, and Honky Tonk Man's talking about $100,000 checks and making so much money. Did you make a ton of money off those? Because it seems like if anybody that had those, like if your era, like you're immortalized basically, because those
Yeah,
figures are so remembered and sold so well.
I still have a few of them actually in the
Oh,
box. Um,
worth a ton.
and of course, then we got the Jack Pacific Toys action figures after that, and we've got new action figures coming out from Relativity Worldwide. There's Cella Toys in England. There's a huge market right now, but back then we didn't make the money like the Sheik and Hillbilly did on that first run.
Yeah.
Vince cut the money down. I mean, um, it was almost like because the guys had such big mouths and everything. It's like telephone, telegraph, telewrestler. They had big mouths and wouldn't stop bragging or whatever. I guess they were just happy and proud. Um, I on the other hand, and most of the guys, Terry Hulkster, one of my dearest friends, we Bret Hart, nobody talked about the money that we were making unless it was between each other. But we still made quite a bit of money from the toys, from the action figures. Not in the $100,000 a quarter range like the Sheik. Others talked about making, but it was fair.
What is up with the Iron Sheik? He always seems to, I don't know if he's joking or what, but he always seems to mention you. I don't know maybe not lately, but that was kind of part of his shtick. Remember, he always say he's going to humble you and all this other stuff. Why always, he's like, I like Jim Riddell. He's like, Brian Blair, screw him. Like, what was that all? Just a joke between you guys, or what was that?
It started in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Um, we used to. I was an amateur wrestler, and I learned MMA before MMA wasn't cool. From
Yeah.
the guys that Hiro Matsuda, Carl Gotch, guys that learned the art of hooking and stretching, and which is kind of counter to amateur wrestling. Amateur wrestling helps when you know how to amateur wrestle when you do MMA. But for example, if you tight waist somebody, and let's say you tight waist a hooker, he's going to double wrist lock you.
Yep.
or ankle pick you, or he's going to do, you put yourself in vulnerable positions because you can't do those things in amateur wrestling. You can't go counter joint. And so if the joint flexes this way, you can't flex it the opposite way. You can't deliberately hurt somebody. So, learning those hooking moves gave me a great base. And so I became like, I don't want to say too many things that are in my book, but I will say this, I was with, in the dungeon here in Florida at 106 North Albany Street off Kennedy, where everybody got stretched in Florida, that you couldn't pay to be a wrestler back then. You had to go through hard times. And believe me, brother, they were some hard times. I mean, oh, I the I puked the first 2 days there. The third day, I rolled out of the ring, and Hiro Matsu lifted my chin up with his bare foot, and he goes, "What's the matter, boy? You no puke today." And I'm barely got, well, Mr. Matsuda, I haven't eaten since the last time I puked. And I could barely get those words out of my mouth. And I could see he turned his head, and I could see his ears raise up because he had this real short haircut, and he could see his ears raise up. So I thought, well, maybe he's happy. I'm sure not. But he kind of dialed it a step down, after that. But out of 3.5 summers that I was there, only 3 people made it. And there was at least 100 people that came in, JP.
Wow.
And at least half of them left without their clothes or their belongings. I mean, because it was brutal. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Lorndorf was the first one to make it through everything. And then it was Hogan and myself, and everybody else quit. A lot of them came back, and Danny Spivey, Scott Hall, a few of them, good people, tough guys. I saw Danny Spivey hit Adrian Adonis so hard in Flint, Michigan, that Adrian's skin literally lifted from right below his nose all the way to his eye, and Adrian's cheekbone was sticking out from one punch, from a left hook. It sounded like a shotgun hit a watermelon. So Danny was a really tough guy. But the stuff we went through, I mean, the calisthenics, the push-ups, the Hindu squats, everything, wrestling, back, amateur wrestling, in college was 3 minutes, high school's 3 2 minutes rounds, you never wrestle, and you got a little break in between. We'd wrestle for 10, 15 minutes straight, no breaks, nothing. And so it was absolutely brutal. But some of the guys that didn't make it in Florida would go to the Carolinas or other places, and they got a break there.
And Sheik met you in Florida? That's where it started?
Oh yeah. So getting back to Sheik, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about those days with Hero, but getting back to Sheik and Hershey, Pennsylvania. Well, we used to kind of play with each other, take each other down, shoot style, different, just for a minute, just for maybe 1 minute of the match. We didn't want to stake the match up, but just to kind of play with each other. And one of us would, tap or okay, and usually it was me. So in Hershey, Sheik front face locked me, and he was cinching down on it. And I came out of the front face lock. I remember coming out of the front face lock on him, and I chicken winged him. I chicken winged him, and gave him chicken wing crossface. He kind of got out of that, and I wound up with a front face lock on Sheik, and all of a sudden he's trying to get out, and he's going, okay, goes and he taps. And so Nikolai started riding his butt so bad. Sheiky, you tap in front of 20,000 people. Be Brian Blair, F you real good. And so this kept brewing with Sheik. He's got a kind of a different mentality. I mean, the Sheik, he has a whole different psychology. So this really bothered him. And that's, there was, he slapped me at this event. I mean, there was some serious heat that, he that he got from innocent things. I thought they were innocent. And, then he was on Howard Stern. They kept trying to get me on the Howard Stern show. And
Yep.
I wasn't going to get on the Howard Stern show with the Sheik, who had been his regular guest and Howard's tight buddy. I'd always get a call. Howard would call me, come on, Brian, come on the show, come on the show. Nah, man, it's not going to be fair. What if I get somebody, I said, all right, you get Piper or somebody on there with me, that'll kind of give me somebody in my corner, because it's
Yeah.
a handicap match with you two against me. And he'd laugh a little bit. Okay, well, but it never really materialized. But people were going through great lengths on the internet to draw these. I mean, you can look them up right now. I'm sure they're still there, for these cartoons. And
Yep.
I don't know how long it takes to make animation. I've never done that, but they've got animated things with the Sheik and B. Brian Blair, and it's pretty funny. It's somebody was very bored to do all that.
Yeah. I remember years ago on Stern, they had fake killer bees with like masks on, and Sheik, he fell for it. He thought it was you guys, and he's like, "Oh, screw you, Brian Blair! Get in here!" But they're showing it on a screen. He's like, "Oh, don't you get in here and fight me!" And like he was basically challenging you, but obviously it's not you; it's somebody else under a mask that worked for the Stern show.
Yeah. So they were doing a lot to try to get me to be their whipping boy, but I didn't see anything redeemable for myself to come out of that.
Now you mentioned WWF and almost winning the tag titles 3 times. Do you remember who you were supposed to beat and what the situations were? I know you mentioned the one time Strikeforce got it instead.
Yeah, we were supposed to beat the Hart Foundation, and actually we did summer. I mean, we did which one? Not Royal Rumble, not SummerSlam. The
Survivor Series 87?
a couple of the other events. Excuse me, I've had
Saturday
14.
Night's Main Event.
The no, the Survivor Series.
Yeah.
Survivor Series. So we win the Survivor Series, and we were supposed to turn heel, and one of the babyface teams were supposed to get the belts. I don't know if it was Strikeforce or we were supposed to get the belts from them. That was one of the programs. Another program where we just beat the Hart Foundation. And I don't remember the exact scenario for the third time, but they really wouldn't completely lay out a program, and they wouldn't do that unless we were going to get the belts. I mean, we'd lay out programs. Of course, we were always the challengers, but to do a scenario where you're getting the belts means pretty much he has to go through with the program once you've gotten into it. And we were just right there. And now tonight the Hart Foundation's going to go over, or you beat them. It's going to be a non-title match. You guys beat the Hart Foundation. It's not going to be a title match. Come back in a title match. Hopefully, we're going to win the titles then. It just, again, there was so much heat with Jimmy and Vince. I don't know and it would have been good business for Vince. So I just don't understand why the hesitation. We later became the world heavyweight champions together in the UWF for Herb Abrams, which was a lot of fun, that promotion. Nothing like the WWE, WWF, but it was still fun. And I've been with Jimmy, all over the world as the Killer Bees since then. Or Mass Confusion. There's a little Vince had Herb Abrams not be able to use the Killer Bees, so he changed us to Mass Confusion. But that was the only time that Vince ever gave us a hard time about using the Killer Bees, was with Herb Abrams, because Herb was so provocative. With Vince, is always in. His words were empty, because there was, he'd say he was going to put Vince out of business, but that just wasn't going to happen.
Yep. But he would try to bring in Bruno, you guys, Andre at one point, Paul Orndorff. So he was trying to bring in, name Snuka, guys with name value. Obviously, not even close to the level of Vince, but I mean, he's bringing in Vince's old guard.
Yeah, absolutely. But production means so much, and Vince's production was and still is second to none. He's got the best production in the business,
Oh
better
yeah,
than AW. AW is good. Vince's production is second to no one, and he's always had the best production. Um, it's just a talent, and Dick Ebersol taught him a lot. We were doing Saturday Night Main Event. A lot of people don't realize this. We did Saturday Night Main Event. Ran for at that time. They had a 1-year deal with NBC, and so we would take one weekend a month from Saturday Night Live, and we were just blowing away the ratings, their ratings,
yeah.
all the ratings. So that was we were supposed to beat the Hart Foundation in one of the best matches that we had with the Hart Foundation in LA, and they changed it from a title match to a non-title match. And I was really upset about that, but I had a choice, basically, either continue to work, making a good living, or go somewhere else. And there was really no place else to go that was where I was going to make half as much as Vince. I mean, I always had my deal in Japan for New Japan Pro Wrestling, but that's 2-3 trips a year, none while I was in WWE. Ironically, Vince McMahon Sr. was the first one to send me there, and I'll always appreciate that.
When you guys quit, how did it like Vince take it? Was he pissed?
He wasn't. He didn't act peed when I gave him my notice, but he tried to talk me out of it. And he said, I said, "Can I give you my 2 weeks notice?" He said, thought about it for a minute, and Vince is a good worker too, so you never know if he's shooting or. And when I said that, he just kind of gave me a smile, and he hesitated, a little smile, and because I said, "Can I give you my 2-week notice?" He said, "Can you give me a month?" And he goes, "I really hate to see you go, Brian." And I said, "Vince, I see the writing on the wall. You've promised us the belts 3 times." He goes, "Well, maybe we can create a new scenario, and you could possibly make more money." And I said, "Well, it's not that, Vince, so much as burn out. We just worked 67 days in a row. A couple months ago, we haven't had much time off." He goes, "Do you need some time off?" And I said, No. I said, "I've kind of had this thing in my mind where I've always kind of had a little entrepreneurship in my mind, and I'd like to, build a Gold's Gym and start go into the fitness industry." He kind of just shook his head and said, "Well, yeah, I understand that." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." He goes, "Let's talk again." I don't know. It was a few days later, and he came up to me. He goes, "How you doing, champ?" Champ. So it was like, wow, dig. How you doing, champ?
Yeah.
I said, "Well, Vince, probably not as good as you, but um, I'm doing okay." He goes, "Well, you still want to leave?" And I said, "Yeah, I got to leave." And he said, "Okay." Because I thought about it, and he said, "Okay." I mean, not that I could, he's telling me, not that I can stop you from doing what you want to do, but you've just become like a fixture around here. What am I going to do without Tease and Beeper? Things like that, because that's a nickname. Um, so he's he kind of tugs at the heartstrings a little bit, and
Yep.
he has a way of getting his way. But I just stayed strong, and I wouldn't change anything, JP. I mean, there's some things that, of course, we'd all go back and change in our lives, but as far as being in the wrestling business and enjoying my time with WWE, WWF, and all the territories and the experiences that I've had, I probably would never have wrestled as long as I did. I've had you know, a lot of aches and pains, which come with age, and but having 4 concussions and 20 surgeries, that's not fun. I get so beat up, and I wrestled until 2019.
Wow.
So from about 78, it was 77, but closer to June, July, I think it was a 77 to what was it to July of 2019. I mean, I was either, even when I had the gyms or even when I was an elected official, I was still doing stuff on the weekends, or going to Japan, or working for Herb Abrams, or for Tom Shade. One of the things, IWF, Tom Shade had a tremendous organization, and it doesn't get nearly enough recognition, but he was a very smart promoter. He went in, and he had a buddy at an Air Force base. He put together a wrestling card, and his first card, um, oh gosh, Colonel De Beers, Easy Ed Wiskowski, and I worked on the first show he had, and we had a really good match. And there was girls, we had midgets, and it was an Air Force base, and they were thrilled. And of course, the place is packed because it's free. So he had a sold show, he had a guaranteed show. And from there, he used the recommendation letter he got from this guy. And, within 4 months, he had shows lined up for the whole year. I mean, every weekend, we were Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday afternoons. We were booked. I mean, Coco Beware went there and took my spot afterwards. I just talked to Coco, by the way, the other day. He's doing good. Uh, a tremendous talent that never got the recognition really that he should have. But this guy he had a tremendous idea. He Tom Shade, and he took the IWF, and then he also went into Indian tribal reservations and casinos. So we were booked, and so we were making good money and could do whatever we wanted during the weekdays. So that was the best gig going, and that lasted for a few years. So that was a lot of fun.
With the WF, did you ever regret quitting though? Did you ever think like, maybe I should have just stayed it out, or you're just happy with that decision and you're glad it went down the way it did?
Well, I felt kind of bad for Jimmy because he stayed around, and Vince didn't treat him real good. But Jimmy, thank God he's doing really good right now, financially and otherwise, health-wise. But Jimmy kind of needed the money then. I had there's a couple, maybe a half a chapter in my book that talks about how to make money and how I made money and saved money, and I was able to go into Gold's Gyms, which you had to have good credit, you had to have a good down payment, and because you had to have a minimum of $250,000 worth of equipment, 10,000 square feet. There's a lot of minimums. It's not a Gold's Gym it's a licensee, not a franchise. A franchise is if you're a McDonald's, it's the same as in Tampa or Tupelo, Mississippi, or Dyersburg, Tennessee. I don't care where you're at. McDonald's, a Big Mac's a Big Mac, pretty much. And you go to Tokyo, they maybe a little bit of difference, but it's pretty much the same. And as a licensee, anything that says Gold's Gym, you have to buy it from Gold's Gym, from corporate, or their licensee, and you have to have your letters exactly as they're given to you. And it's, other than that, they don't tell you how much to charge a month. They don't give you a business plan. I had to create my own policies and procedures, my own flow charts, everything, do my own leases. And it was just kind of, hit and miss, do the best you can. And we went from one member and one gym to building 4 locations, and I leased out 3 other locations, and went from one member. I believe when we had well over 100,000 members when we sold the clubs, so that was a lot of members,
Wow.
and it sold them when they weren't for sale. So that's the best time to sell something.
Wow. So as we start to wind it down, head towards the finish here, just kind of like a generic question, but I love asking because you can check on YouTube nowadays. You can check WWE Network. They have all the territories on there. Do you have favorite matches or maybe a favorite opponents, guys, that stick out that if somebody just wants to type into the network or maybe YouTube, like Beat Brian Blair versus or Killer Bees versus, do you have some favorites?
Well, there's a lot of favorites. I mean, even there's a match with Bob Backlund and I teaming up against Adrian Adonis and Murdoch that you could YouTube, and
Oh, wow.
uh,
Awesome.
that's a good match. Anything with the Hart Foundation. I don't know if there's much with Ravishing Rick Rude. And in Florida they taped all their tapes, but I don't know. I mean, taped all their matches, uh, just about. Had some wonderful matches with Ravishing Rick Rude, with Paul Orndorff. I mean, there's a match with Paul Orndorff and I from, well, there's a couple of them on there. There's more than a couple, but from St. Louis, there's a couple. And there's one where I have red tights on and one where I have black tights on. And Vince McMahon was doing the commentary. And that was just you had to be, if you were there. I mean, you could tell on television, I mean on YouTube, but the people stood, JP, from 2 minutes into the match until the end of the match, like a 20-minute match. I mean, there was people standing in groups the whole time. And Vince came up to us afterwards. Chief Jay Strongbow came up to Paul and I and said, "Hey, you guys got to get to Vince's dressing room. He wants to talk to you. Caesar wants to talk to you." So I knew I had a good match. I said, "Well, did I do something wrong? Did he get mad when I dropped the elbow on Orndorff's balls or what?" I don't know what. Something's wrong. So we go in there, and Vince is not a touchy-feely guy. Trust me, he's kind of a germaphobe. But we're all both still sweating, and he grabbed both Paul and I because we looked at each other. We're both going in at the same time. He grabs us. "God, that was the best match I've ever seen in my life." And he goes, "I'm not just telling you that." He put his right hand up. He goes, "I swear to you guys, that was the best match that I've ever seen in my life." He was so excited. And that's a good one that you can watch as well. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of them, JB.
What would you say is the legacy of Brian Blair? Obviously CAC included in your book and everything you got going on, and even TV projects maybe you got going on. But
I,
what's like the career and everything? What do you think when people will look back, like the stamp, like Brian Blair? I remember he was what?
one of the hardest workers that ever got in the ring, and a good guy, one of the true good people in the business. There's nobody in this business that could say I ever stole from him, that I ever lied to him, that I ever cheated them. There's nobody in this business that has ever worked with me that would ever tell you that I was lazy, that I didn't give it 100%. I mean, I've always been a hustler. Uh, I've always worked my hardest, and I just hope that people would just remember me for hard work and integrity.
As far as plugs, the book, social media, give us everything you got.
Well, I've got Truth Be Told, my book that's available on Amazon right now. It's less than $24. It'll be there in a few days. Promise you, you'll like it. If not, if you don't like this book, I will give you double your money back. You contact
Wow.
me and you just heard it on JP's podcast, I'll give you double your money back. Don't go buy 1,000 of them and ask me. Uh, Developed a new reality television show called Pro Wrestling Challenge, and
Wow.
uh,
Nice.
actually have my third meeting with Vice Friday. So
Wow.
got
Hopefully that
a
comes
lot
out. Very cool. What's that about?
going on, and of course we've got the Cauliflower Alley Club. Please go to caulifloweralleyclub.org And if you're a fan of wrestling, for $25, you can become a member. You get 4 copies of our newsletter, The Ear. It's tremendous per year. You can join as a life member for $300, and that being a member of the Cauliflower Alley Club allows you to go to our reunions, and they're off the chart. We just had one, our 55th in September. This coming September, we'll have another one, moving to a new hotel downtown, the Plaza Hotel, completely remodeled, $39 a night hotel rooms. You can do the whole event for $150. It's great family atmosphere. There'd be 200 plus wrestlers that you'll know, and it's a wonderful time. And believe me, you're helping the guys out that really need it, the guys that entertain you. And so, caulifloweralleyclub.org. Truth be told, hopefully the reality show Pro Wrestling Challenge, keeping our fingers crossed, and just got a lot of things going on.
Nice. Are you allowed to say what the show is about, or not until you get a little further along?
It's kind of, well, I'd rather wait till we sign the deal, or people read things and then they're going to jump out, even though we have things trademarked and things like that. JP, then until it's a deal, it's not.
Yep.
Until you sign everything and it's a bona fide deal, it's not a deal. It's still a dream.
Thank you, Mr. Blair, for everything. Of course, check out CAC and Truth Be Told, BEE, Be Told. So thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to be on the 2-man power trip, JP, and I wish you nothing but good things, and your audience as well. Thank you so much.